Chicago World's Fair, 1893. Let's talk about it. Welcome to our next video at Bonfire Blessings. I've been studying this stuff for a couple days just to get the background here. Hi everybody. And I've come away with more questions than answers. We are going to look at a book that looks like something you would buy as a souvenir book. 50 cents a person was the ticket price to get into the World's Fair. It was called the White City. It was called the Columbian Expo. So I'm guessing if you went to an Ice-Capades and bought an Ice-Capades book, or a circus and bought a circus book, this may have been an extra 50 cents. This is a reproduction that I bought. Remember that power tools were invented by humans in 1895. And this World's Fair was in 1893. So as we go along, I've got a lot of questions here. Down here is a people, 2 persons, just for size of you to see how large this thing was. 600 acres, generally in the western, northwestern area of Chicago. But at that time, Chicago was such a swamp land that it was all of what was called Shalaga before there was a Lake Michigan. So at this time, there was a Lake Michigan. It had been made. That is on the back page. I'll show you that. That was so interesting to me. Here it is. This is what is Navy Pier today. Because here is Field Museum. At one time it was the Science Museum. It is now the Field Museum and Soldiers Field. So we're looking at southwest, but imagine that this fair encompassed so much land mass. There were 2 fires before the time of the fair. Miraculously, the meat processing plant and all the railroads were not burned. And you gotta wonder about these buildings. Were they built after the time of fires? Were they protected from the fires? There was a working water tower that acted as a sprinkler. At the time of the fire, or the time that Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over a lantern and set parts of Chicago on fire, the building across the street from the water tower that still stands did not go away. So one has to wonder what the historical timeline truly is. This is from one height perspective. Let's just dig right into this and move on, shall we? I am throwing a lot of Chicago information at you because it's my hometown, and I know a lot of the back history. What I don't know is what I have just learned in this book, and so for that, I'm trying to balance and stay within my allotted time here. It was called the White City because of how it lit up at night. And yet, as we go through these pictures, please note Antiquitech on top of every single building, which means, in essence, free energy, right? Or energy that came from something that was not an electricity line, because electricity didn't come to Chicago via all the lines all over the place until later. So we've got a white city lit up at night by thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of lights, including searchlights, by the way, that bounced off the water of this phenomenal lagoon without any electric wiring. Just a curiosity. Okay, here's another person, and here's the doorway. This is built giant-sized, just saying. And again, no power tools. Look at the sculpting here and the size of the person. Just as reference points, I'm dumbfounded as I go through this. These photos are incredibly beautiful. Here's a full picture of the lagoon from another building. And Antiquitech. Are these free energy poles? We don't know. Nothing is mentioned about them, but you find them very systematically all around the entire park and the entire layout that looks like it's laid out like the perfect promenade of a city, except that the roads are all flooded. So in my mind, I'm thinking this was a city that became a swamp from something like, say, a giant flood. And to decorate this one, we just hung an American flag. I mean, that's my best guess here. There are people in this photo. In many of the photos, there are not. And I'm wondering where they got the pictures if there are no workers. There are no people at, we'll see further on. Who was there for photographing if there was no one in the photos? I just came away from this short study with more questions than answers. And at this point in looking at history and historical timelines, I'm open to anything. Please leave me a comment, leave a criticism. I don't even know what to think. Look at this bridge work done into the swamp. They must have found bedrock of some kind, because look at all the people on the bridge. And yet, 5 years later, it was all gone. This is the goddess of liberty, either made of gold or coated completely in gold, called Columbia. Columbia is the goddess of liberty. Just like the Statue of Liberty, this is female, depicted always, and holding up something representing eternal knowledge. In this case, we see a ball, a sphere, a globe, perhaps. That is a different video. If you want a video on flat Earth, either it's linked or it's in my list page. Look at the Antiquitech up here. And again, they decorated the tops of it with flags, but these are not flagpoles. These are built in, I'm assuming, some kind of metal. I'm assuming copper, but because it's black and white, we don't know, right? The lagoon, I don't know the depth, but they're floating boats on it. People paid for boat rides. Here's people. Here's the buildings. And they claim this was ready in 2 years of 600 acres of buildings this big. And one of those buildings today is the Science and Industry Museum. And another one of those buildings today is the Field Museum. So, yeah. I'm going to let that sit there and we're going to move on. And again, searchlights in the middle of the night. it was lit up for 6 months while this ran. This was summer of 1893, so this was over 100 years ago. Perfect structures. It looks to me like limestone, which would be par for the course for that region. And again, I only know that because I know the mining history of the region. It does not say specifically. Look at this. Just, it's so beautiful. And again, people versus entryways. They're triumphal. Like you're entering into a city and every single building repeats the triumph of their, see, this became the Field Museum. There it is. What could not possibly have been made without power tools of some kind? It just couldn't. Any builders out there want to help me out with that? I have more questions than answers at this point. All right, steel girders in this unique style that we don't normally do. This was actually glass on top. This is either there or redone or replicated on Navy Pier today. I do know it had a refurbishing about 20 to 25 years ago, because I've been in this building since it's been emptied out, and it's used for a myriad of things out on Navy Pier today, or in our era, right? How do you build this without cranes and heavy machinery, and just how? This statue is different. This is not Columbia. This is made out of silver. So we've got silver for mining. We've got gold for Columbia. I don't even know how tall is this woman. It doesn't even say. This is a silver statue of justice, and there's no person here for me to even gauge. So assume that the average height of someone's this tall. This thing may have only been 12 to 15 feet tall, but it's solid silver. Did we have processes in place to produce this? More questions than answers. Antiquitech decorated with flags. Just for the hell of it, because they could. I don't know. I don't know. Again, we've got no man lifts to put flags up here. Did they build scaffolding, put them up, and then take the scaffolding down? Maybe. How'd they build scaffolding without power tools? Who put the scaffolding together? Where are the people? No people. But beautiful. It almost looks like a postcard. Light bulbs. Before the time of light bulbs. Curious. Love your comments. Please put them down below in the comment section, just for our own shits and giggles. I feel like I'm out of words, which is I'm a writer, right? So that's a little interesting. Here are people. Here are doorways. Even the doors, compared to the size of the people, the doors are twice as tall. And then we've got, again, the triumphal entrances made of, at my best guess, I'm going limestone again because of the quarries in the area. It's amazing. I understand why you'd pay 50 cents. Look at this concert hall, band shell. This is outdoors. Why can't we do things as beautiful as this today? Look at the engraving. It's systematically, completely consistent. Here's people. This is a choir singing. I didn't even count the number in the choir, but if you count the people in the choir, you can count their little heads here. And then look at the size of this thing. And even the size of the beautiful tapestry behind it. How was this made without the tools we have today? If someone could explain that, I think I would be eager to accept the historical timeline and see that yes, humans can do this. But if that can't be explained, all I have is giants. Nephilim did this with, I don't know, occult knowledge. Again, Antiquitech. Lots of our churches have this today because they have organs that would be vibrational healing centers or power generators in towns. There are some cities that have far more old world churches and organs than others, by the way. And I will do a program on that, and eventually I'll link it to this because I love architecture, and architecture's so different when you're seeing it from the perspective of humans could not have done this if it was built at the time that this narrative timeline says it was. From the ground up, post citywide fire, in a city that was supposedly built mostly of wood, when the buildings that made it through unscathed were not wood. Just saying, how many were, how many weren't. Do we honestly believe the history at this point? Okay, so back to Chicago. It's so beautiful. I hate to just give you a deep sigh and say, wow, it's beautiful, and yet I don't believe a word of it. I don't know what to believe. Would I have paid 50 cents? Oh yeah, 6 days in a row. Because it must have been otherworldly, especially for people who were used to bouncing around in wooden wagons with wooden wheels pulled by horses and oxen, or walking behind a plow so that they could survive by making their own food. To take a train on tracks that were already there, on trains that were powered by coal that came out of mines. And who built the mines if there were no power tools? I keep coming back to that. But you can't have a mine without building a mine or digging a mine. But you still have to have the infrastructure there. And so then you pull the coal out of the mine to put into the steam engine or the coal-powered engine to get these engines and train cars that were built somewhere onto the railroad tracks to get the people to bring them to the White City for the Columbian Expo. Personally, I would just build a little wooden shelter campground and stay there for the summer. This is so amazing. American flag on top of Old World Antiquitech. Amazing. Just amazing. Here's a woman standing at a wooden fence outside of a building. Again, energy pole. We called them lightning rods when I was growing up. And by the time I was grown and my children are now grown, they're nowhere to be found. So generation after generation, we are losing this history. Oh, I was pointing out to you that surrounding this beautiful building, not only might there be cellar mud flood windows here, this is dirt. Totally dirt. Now this looks like concrete. So they spent all this money on concrete. If you didn't know, a standard patio or driveway could run you between $1,000 and $10,000 today to pour. Best guess. Could be more. It's never less. Look at the steps and the concrete walkways, and where did this come from? At a day when, again, they drove in with horses and wagons. People very well dressed that don't look like construction workers, by the way. And my time is about up. So, how was this made? Number 1. What language is this? Number 2. I thought we spoke English. So if English speakers, Americans, American construction workers with this kind of skill, who were busy trying to feed themselves on farms at the very same time, actually built this, what are we looking at? Just what are we looking at? I don't know. Here's your blessing for the day. May your mind be open to receive wisdom and blessings from the God who made heaven and earth. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help the channel grow, and leave us comments. Let's open this discussion. I'm absolutely floored. What picture can I leave you with? This was like the end of my brain thought, quite honestly. Let's go back to the Columbia. And there she is. They probably knocked her into the water when they flooded Lower Wacker. All right, that was my snarky comment for the day. Blessings, everybody. Bye-bye.